Hello everyone, welcome to today's lecture of object-oriented programming using Java, and the paper code is CS504A. This is Shayani Chandra, Assistant Professor of Department of Computer Science and Engineering of Guru Nanak Institute of Technology. Let's look at today's lecture contents. Today we will learn about how objects can be returned from a method in Java. Then the next topic that we will learn today is recursion. We have already known the fact of recursion in previous programming languages like C or C++. Today we will see how the same concept can be applied on Java programming. Next we will learn what are the differences between public and private access specifiers. So let's start with returning objects in Java. As we all know that values can be returned from a method in Java. That is known as a method returning some values, and that value can be of any primitive type. Similarly, we can also return objects from a method in case of Java programming. By returning objects, we can return any particular type of data which are the primitive types. So let's see an example program to understand how objects can be returned from a method. This is an example program that shows how an object can be returned from a method. So let's understand this program by understand the concept of the execution of this program. We all know that the execution of a Java program starts from the main method. So here I have written the main method, and this is the main class. As this is the main class, that's why I have saved the program using this class name. So the file name is ret.ob and the extension is .java. Now inside this main method, we have created an object ob1 of this test class. This is the test class, which is a user defined class. And we have created an object ob1 of this test class here. And then inside the constructor calling part, we have passed a value 2. So we can see that there is a constructor body inside the test class. That means this 2 value will be passed into this constructor parameter I, which is an integer parameter, and this 2 is also an integer value. So no type mismatch is there. 2 can easily be stored into this parameter I. Then inside the body of the constructor, we can see that an assignment statement has been written, and inside this assignment statement, the value of the variable I, which is 2, will be assigned into the instance variable A. So this instance variable, this is the instance variable that is declared directly inside the class. This is an integer variable. Now this A instance variable now contains 2 after this statement has been executed. After that, we have taken another statement where we have declared a reference variable of the same class type test. The reference variable name is ob2. So this ob2 is the reference variable of the same class test. Now after that, using the object ob1, we have called a method named increment by 10. Here you can see that the body of the method is written. This is the method increment by 10. Normally, when a method returns a value, its return type is written just before the name of the method. That means if a method returns an integer value, then the primitive data type int, which is the return type of the method, should be written just before the method name. That means if the method name is show, then the return type is int, then it should be written like int show. Let me explain you by writing it. This is what I was telling just now. This is the method name, and this is the return type of the method. These things I have already discussed while discussing methods in detail in my previous lectures. So this is the method name, and if this show method returns an integer value, then the return type, which is a primitive type of Java, should be written just before the method name. And this is where we will write down the body of the method. The codes that the method would contain should be written inside the method block. Now let's go back to the program. Here also you can see that this is the method name increment by 10, and this is the return type of the method. So here you can see that the return type is the class type itself. That means this method would return a value which will be of this class type. So if a method's return type is declared as int, then that method should return some integer value. Similarly, if a method's return type is defined as a class name, as a class type, then that method, which is increment by 10 in our case, should return a value which is of that class type. That means this increment by 10 method would return a value that will be of this test class type, because its return type is set as the class type test. That means this method would return a value that will be of this class type. Now what does this actually mean? Returning a value that is of test class type actually means returning an object of this test class type. A value that will be of a class type means an object of that class. That we already know because we have already discussed about class and object in our previous lectures. That's why returning a value of a particular class type means returning an object of that class. That means this increment by 10 method will actually return an object of this class test. Now let's see what is written inside the method body so that this method returns an object of this test class. Now we can see that inside the method body we have created another object temp, which is of this test class again. Now this temp is an object, another object of this test class, and inside this constructor calling part, we can see that a value a plus 10 has been passed. Now using the object ob1, this is the object ob1. Using this object, we have already passed a value 2 into this variable a, and this increment by 10 method has been called using the object ob1. That means this increment by 10 method already has the value of a, which is 2, that has been passed to it by ob1, because this method has been called using this object ob1. That means increment by 10, this method has already the value of a in it, which is 2, which has been passed into it by the object ob1. So if I pass another value here in this object creation statement by writing a plus 10, that means actually 2 plus 10, which is 12, is being passed. So actually 12 will be now passed into this parameter I. Then from this I, the value 12 will be passed into this a instance variable. So now a contains 12. Now if we return temp by writing it like this is a normal return statement. Normally when we return from a method, then we use the return statement. If a method returns an integer value, then we use the return statement before the integer variable name. Say for example, if a method returns an integer variable's value, which is a, the variable name is a, suppose, then the return statement would be return a. Let me write it down. So if this method returns an integer value and the value is stored in an integer variable a, then the return statement should be written as return a. Here a is the integer variable whose value will be returned to its calling method. Now similarly, if a method returns an object, then the return statement should be written as return, then the object variable name. Object variable means the reference variable name. Now let's go back to the program. So basically, this temp here is the reference variable, because in the previous statement we have created the object inside this reference variable temp of this test class type. So here we will return temp, which is the reference variable or object variable. Now this temp variable or this temp object will be returned to whom? It will be returned to the calling method of this increment by 10 called method. Here in this program, this increment by 10 method is being called. That's why it is called method, and it is being called from inside the main method. That's why main is the calling method. So the value of this object temp will be returned to the main method, and it will be returned to where? It will be returned to here. Here it will be returned, and after returning we have written an assignment statement. That means the value that will be returned will be stored into OB2. Actually we are here returning the value of a, which is an integer value. So actually by returning this object to its calling method, we are returning the value of a, which is an integer value. So basically, if we access the value a using this object, we can easily get 12, because the value of the object has been returned here, and then it has been stored into the OB2 reference variable. This is the reference variable here. So if we access the a variable using the object OB2, we can easily get the value 12. In the next two statements, the values of the a variables are printed. Using OB1, the value of the a variable is 2, because using OB1 we have passed the value 2 into it, and using the object OB2 we have got the value of the variable a as 12. So this statement will give you an output 12, and this statement will give you an output 2. Now again the increment by 10 method has been called, but this time using the object OB2. This time increment by 10 method has been called using the object OB2. So whenever this statement will be executed, the program control will be transferred to here. And now it has been called using the object OB2, and OB2 contains the value of a as 12. So now the value of a we have is 12. Now this statement will be executed again. So again an object temp will be created, and inside this constructor calling part, a value that has been passed into this parameter I is a plus 10. Now a contains 12, so a plus 10, that is 12 plus 10, which is 22, will be passed into this variable I, then from this I into a. So now the value, the variable a contains an upgraded value which is 22. Now this return statement will be executed. After that, after this statement gets executed, that means the object will be returned now. Now it will be returned to where? It will be returned to its calling method, which is main, and inside main it will be returned to where? It will be returned here. That means actually this value of the temp object will be returned to here, and after that we have written an assignment statement which says that the value that has been returned to here will be stored into the OB2 reference variable again. So basically the value that has been returned to here is the value of the integer variable a. So basically now OB2 contains the value of the integer variable a as 22. So now if we access the a variable using the object OB2, this would obviously give you a value 22. So in the next statement, the same thing that I just told has been written. The value of the variable a has been accessed using the object OB2. This should give you 22. Now let's execute the program. Just as I told that the value of a accessed using the object OB1 will give you 2. The value of a after the first call has been made is 12, and the value of a after the second call has been made is 22. So this is how we can return an object from a method, from a called method to its calling method. And we can see that returning an object means a value that should be returned of a particular class type, because we know that an object holds the copies of the members of its class type. So returning an object means that we are returning values of a particular class type. So here we can see that by returning the object, we are actually returning the value of the instance variable a, which is an integer value. So this is how we can return an object, by returning the value of a particular class type in Java, along with returning normal variables, normal primitive type variables in Java. The next topic of our today's lecture is recursion. We already know what is recursion. We know that recursion happens when a function calls itself again and again. And we know that a function is known as a method in Java. The same concept of calling a method again and again from its own body is known as recursion. The same concept is applied in Java also. So let's look at a program to see how recursion can be implemented by using Java programming knowledge. So this is an example program to show how factorial can be computed using the concept of recursion. Now we all know what is a factorial. Basically, factorial of a number n means that the product of all the whole numbers between 1 and n. So let me give you an example first, then I'll come back to this program. Let us take this example. If we are calculating the factorial of the value 3, then I have already told that the factorial of a value n means the product of the whole numbers of all the values between 1 and n. So if we are calculating the factorial of the value 3, then it should be calculated as 3 into 2 into 1, the product of all the values between 1 of all the whole numbers between 1 and 3, which are 1, 2 and 3, including the values 1 and 3. So this should give you 6. That means if we are calculating the factorial of a value n, then it should be written like n into n minus 1 into n minus 2 into, and it should go up to 1. So this is the formula of calculating the factorial of a number n. Now let's go back to the program to understand how this concept of calculating factorial can be implemented by using recursive method call. Let's understand the concept of this program by understanding its execution process. We know that program's execution starts from main. So here it is the main method. This is the main class. This is the file name, and this is the extension .java. Inside this main class, we have created an object f of this class factorial, which is a user-defined class. And after that, I have written 3 system.out.println statements. And inside these 3 statements, I have called the fact method. This is the fact method, which is a recursive method. I'll explain why is it called a recursive method. Now see, when the first system.out.println statement is executed, here this fact method is called using the object f, and the value that has been passed into it is 3. So the value 3 will be passed into this variable n. This is the parameter of this method, which is an integer parameter, and 3 is also an integer value, so no type mismatch is there. So whenever this fact method will be called using the value 3 and using the object f, the program control will be transferred to here. So basically 3 is passed into n. That means here in this program, we are calculating the factorial of the value 3. That should give you 6. This is the recursive method. Why? Because this method will call itself from its own body. Now this is a variable result which will store an integer value. Basically this result variable will store the factorial value of this value 3 or of this variable n. Now this is the exit condition of this recursive method. If n equal to 1, return 1. If the value of n is 1, then the value 1 will be returned. Now this is the statement where the factorial is being computed and the recursive call to the same method has been made. The statement is fact n minus 1. That means the same method fact has been called with a value n minus 1. That means this time when the call to this fact method has been made from here, first the value that has been passed into n is 3. So here the same method has been called again inside its own body using a value n minus 1. So basically this method will be called again inside its own body, from inside its own body, using a value 3 minus 1, 2. So this time the fact method has been called using a value 2. Now after that, into n. That means the value of n will be multiplied to this value. So now let's understand this program by understanding this calculation. To better understand how the fact method is working, let's go through this example, this one, where the value of n has been taken as 3. Now when you compute this factorial of this value 3, the first call to this fact will cause a second call to be made with an argument 2, and this invocation will cause fact to be called with a third time with an argument 1. That means when this fact method will be called, suppose there is this fact method written here, I have not written it. This is the ultimate um, iterative recursive approach where the recursive approach has been taken. This is the statement that has been written in the program. So basically when the call is being made for the first time using the value of the n variable as 3, and that call will again call the same fact method with a value 2, because you can see that in the recursive method calling it was written like fact n minus 1. Here is the thing where you can see that the fact method is calling itself again from inside its own body. So here the recursive method call is taking place. And when the value of n is 3 in the first call, in the second call from inside its own body, the value becomes 2. In the third call, the value becomes 1. And after that, the product statements are there. I'm not writing it. So when the value of n becomes 1, you can see in the program that there is an exit condition which says if n equal to 1, then return 1. So whenever the value of n has become 1, this if statement will be satisfied and the value of 1 will be returned. Return to whom? Return to its calling method. Now, this is where the recursive method has been called. Here in this statement, the recursive method has been called. So this is the called method, and it has been called from which method? It has been called from itself. That means the calling method is also the fact method itself. That means this one value will be returned to this fact method itself. Now after this value 1 has been returned to its calling method, that means this one has been returned to this fact method again, because in the program you can see that this recursive call to this fact method has been made from inside the body of the fact method itself. That's why the called method here is this is the statement where the method has been called. So this is the called method, and it has been called from inside the body of itself. So this is the calling method also. So this value 1 will be returned to this calling method. That means, let me go back to the program. Here is the program. You can see that this fact n minus 1, this recursive method call has been made from inside this fact method body. So here this is the called method, which is the fact method, and this is the calling method again, which is the fact method itself. That means here the called method and the calling methods are same, because this is the method which has been called recursively from the body of this fact method itself. So when this one value will be returned, it will be returned to this fact method. Now let me explain what happens after this one value is returned. So after this one value has been returned, these values will be then multiplied, because we can see that these multiplication statements are written after this recursive method call. That means these one value has been returned to its calling method. This one value will then be multiplied with 2. Why 2? Because when this value has been fact 2, this was 3. When this value was fact 1, this was actually 2. This was 2 because it was n. And when fact was n minus 1 here, then it should be multiplied with 2. After that, n has become 1. So this exit condition is satisfied. 1 will be returned to this fact. So when 1 will be returned to this fact, it will be first multiplied with this 2. After that, it will be multiplied with this 3. That means whenever the value 1 will be returned, it will be multiplied by 2. 2 is the value of n in the second call. And this result, which is 2 into 1, which is 2, will be multiplied then with the original method call, and it will be multiplied with the value 3. That means the original value of n, which is 3. So 2 into 3, it should give you 6. And after that, let me go back to the program. After that, the value of the variable result, which contains the ultimate value 6, will be returned. Returned to whom? Returned to the calling method of this fact method. Here, fact method has been called from inside this main method. So here main is the calling method and fact is the called method. So the value of the variable result will be returned to here. That means calling, it will be returned to the calling method, and inside the calling method, it will be returned to where? It will be returned to here. So the value of the factorial 3 will be shown as 6. And in the same way, the value of the factorial 4 and the value of the factorial 5 will also be computed. So this is how the recursive method calls are executed, and a method that calls itself is known as a recursive method. Here this fact is the recursive method. Here the method fact calls itself. So this is a recursive method call statement, and the whole process is known as recursion. This is the same program that you have already learned in C or C++ languages while implementing the concept of recursion. The same concept of recursion is applied here also in Java program like this. So let me execute the program to show you the output. This is what I just explained. The value of the factorial 3 is being shown as 6. The value of the factorial 4 is being shown as 24. And the value of the factorial 5 is being shown as 120. So this is all about recursion. Now let's go to our next topic of today's lecture, which is the difference between public and private access specifiers. I have already explained the concept of access specifiers in the very first lectures of my lecture series. There are 4 access specifiers that are being provided by Java actually: public, private, protected, and default. The 3 main access specifiers are public, private, and protected. These are the keywords also that are available in Java. And the fourth one is default. If we don't write any access specifier, then Java automatically assumes that there is a default access specifier, and Java gives that particular variable or method or class the default access. Now today we will learn how private access specifiers can be used in a program and what are the differences between private and public access specifiers. Now before going into the detail, let me explain you shortly what are the differences between public and private access specifiers. We all know that an access specifier tells you how to access a particular variable or a method or a class and from where you can access those things. Access specifiers can be placed before a variable or before a method or before a class. Now, if you place public access specifier before those things, then the same things can be accessed from anywhere, from any program that you have written. But if you place private access specifier before a variable or before a class or before a method, then they can be accessed only from inside the class inside which they are defined. Outside the class, you cannot access the private members of another class. Even if you create an object of that class, then also using that object, you cannot access the private members of a class. But obviously there is another way using which you can access private members of a particular class from another class. Today we will do an example program to make you understand that concept. So this is an example program that shows you how you can access a public variable, a default variable, and a private variable. This is an example class test which has three instance variables inside it, A, B, C. Before A, I have just written its data type. I have not written any access specifier before the data type. So Java automatically assumes that its default access specifier is of default type. So Java gives it a default access. This is another instance variable B, which is an integer variable, and its access specifier is defined to be public. And this is another integer type instance variable C, and its access specifier is defined to be private. So this is how we can write an access specifier before a variable. We have to write the access specifier just before the data type of the variable. And if we don't write any access specifier, then Java automatically assumes that that particular variable has default access. Now you can also write access specifiers before a method or before a class. But in this example, I'll just show you how you can access the variables using the access specifiers. The same concept of accessing variables using access specifiers is applied on methods and classes also. This is the main class access test. This is the main method. Inside the main method, we have created object OB of this test class. Inside the object, we are assigning values into the instance variables A and B. Now A has a default access, so it can easily be assigned with a value 10, and this is not going to give you any error. Using the B, using the object OB, we are assigning values, a value 20 into the instance variable B, which is a public variable, so no problem in assigning value into it. Now using the object OB, we are assigning a value 100 to another variable, another instance variable of the class test, which is C. But this statement is going to give you an error because it is a private variable. This variable can only be accessed inside this test class. If you want to access this private variable from another class, like what we are doing here, we want to access this variable from this access test class, which is our main class, that you cannot do even if you are creating an object. Here you can see that object OB is the object of the test class, and we are accessing it using the object. This thing you cannot do if it is a private variable, because private variable can only be accessed inside the class body, and whenever you are coming out from the class, the private variable becomes invalid and its access becomes restricted. So from another class you cannot access the private members of another class. So that's why this statement is going to give you error. Now after this statement, if you want to print the values of a, b and c, obviously that statement is also going to give you error, because even if you can print the values of a and b, the value of c cannot get printed. So this program is going to give you an error. Let me write it down. Let me write down the value printing statement after it. So in this statement, I am just printing the values of the variables a and b. And in the next statement, I'll be printing the value of the variable c. So as this program will not compile, because this is where the error will happen, so these two statements will also not be executed. Now let's execute the program to show you the output and more specifically the error that will be thrown if you want to access a private member of another class from another class. See, I have compiled the program and the two errors that are being thrown are these. This is the line number where the error has happened, and this is the file name where the error has happened. Now, the error description is C has private access in test. As you can see that inside the test class, the variable C has private access. That's why from another class, when you want to access the C variable like this is going to give you an error. This is the error statement. This is the error line where the error has happened. And this is where this arrow marks the location where the error has happened, inside this statement. This is another line where the error is happening again. Here, when we want to print its value, the same error has been given. And this is the arrow which gives you the exact location where the error has happened inside this statement. So these are the two errors that are being thrown because we want to access a private member of a class from another class. Now this thing you cannot do. But obviously there are other ways using which you can access a private member of a class from another class. Now let me do that code. So this is how you can access a private member of a class from another class. Here you can see that what I have done, I have defined a method setC. Its return type is void and it takes one parameter, which is an integer parameter. So this method will actually set the value of C with a value of I, and the value of I will be passed to this setC method from its calling method. And this is another method getC. Its return type is integer. It is a non-parameterized method. It will just return the value of C to its calling method. So using these two methods, we can easily access the private member C from another class. That means in order to access a private member of a class from another class, you have to define a method inside that class inside which you have defined the private member. And using that method, you can easily access the private member of that class from another class. Now let's understand the program by understanding its execution steps. Execution will start from main, then object OB will be created of this test class. This is the test class. The two variables a and b. A is a default variable, b is the public variable. Both will be assigned with values 10 and 20 respectively. There will be no problem with these statements. They are not going to give you errors because they have default and public access, so they can be directly accessed like this. Obviously there are differences between default and public access specifier that we will discuss in inheritance and package chapters, because most of the concepts of the other access specifiers are related with the package concept in Java. So the differences between public, protected and default access specifiers will be discussed in that chapter. Today we are just learning how to access private members of a class from another class. Now what we are doing, we are then calling the set C method and we are passing a value 100 into it. Now this set C method is not a private method. You have to remember that in order to access a private member of a class from another class, you have to use a method inside the same class body inside which you have defined the private member. But that method should not be declared as private. That method should be declared as default or public. If you declare this method as private also, then you can never access the C variable using it from another class. So you have to make it default or public. So inside this I variable, the 100 value is being stored and the value of I, which is 100, is then stored into the variable C. Then after that, in the next statement, we are printing the values of A, B and C. OB.A will give you the value of A, which is 10. OB.B will give you the value of B, which is 20. And after that, to get the value of C, we are calling this getC method. GetC method is another default method written inside the scope of the same class within which the private variable has been defined. So getC method will return the value of C and it will be returned to its calling method, and inside the calling method, which is main, the value C will be returned to where? It will be returned to here. So basically the value of C that will be returned to here will be 100. So 100 will be shown. So this is how you can access the private variable C from another class using these two methods. So these two methods should be declared as public or default. You can also declare it as protected, but remember that these two methods using which you are accessing a private variable from this class of this class from another class should not be declared as private. If you declare these methods private, then you can never access C from access test or main class. So you can obviously use one method instead of these two. The same method can be used for this value assignment and value returning also. You can also do this, but here I have written two different methods to show you the two different functions that these two methods are performing. The first one is a value assignment function that has been happening inside this method body, and the second method is actually returning the value. You can obviously combine these two functions, these two um, works inside one method body also. That thing also you can do, that will also give you the same output. So let's execute the program to show you that the private member can easily be accessed by this process from this main class. As I just told that the values of A, B and C are being shown 10, 20 and 100. So C is a private member. Even though it is a private member, it has been accessed from another class using the two methods that I have defined, which are default methods inside the scope of the same class within which the private variable C has been defined. So this is how you can access a private member of a class from another class. This is all about today's lecture. So today you have learned about how an object can be returned from a method, what happens when an object is returned from a method to its calling method. Then you have learned about recursion. The concept is already known to you. You have just implemented the same concept in a Java program. And lastly, you have learned how private variables or any private member of a class can be accessed from another class. And you have also learned that what are the differences between public access and private access of members of a particular class. Thank you for listening to today's lecture. See you in the next lecture.